Arkadaşlardan haberim var. Onları çağırmak.
Biraz sonra izle. Şu an programasyonu içebilir miyim?
Ayıp olmaz korkma. Ne kadar kişi falan bunu görebiliyor muyuz hocam? YouTube'dan ne kadar kişi izlediğini görebiliyor muyuz? Başlayalım mı? Başlayabilir miyim? Hello, everybody. It's with great pleasure that I introduce today's speaker, Ömer Pekin. Mr. Pekin was born in 1991 in Istanbul, Turkey, where he currently lives and works. He received a master's degree in architecture from SciArc, Southern California Institute of Architecture, and a bachelor's degree from Akademie der Bildenden Künste, Fine, Austria. Excuse my pronunciation. Ömer Pekin develops digital imagery to explore digitally enhanced architectural compositions as art. Through utilization of emergent systems and other computational algorithms, he has developed a unique form of visual practice that evolves between art and architecture. His work embodies different media, such as digital imagery, prints, 3D prints, and other objects. His works have been published and exhibited in various locations in Austria, Turkey, and the United States. So I'll pass the camera on to our speaker.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me? Hi, I think I can start now. If everything is okay. So thanks for welcoming. Is it okay? Okay. So yeah, sure. Thanks for welcoming. I'm going to speak about several things. I'll start that you told me. Before that, I'd like to introduce myself. In Istanbul, I'm working as an architect. Mostly people. Are you an architect or are you an artist? So it has been able to tell everything. So, or at least the difference. And trying to deal with question what is art and what am I doing and at a young age, I guess. So basically, I'll I prepared for you guys. Start with the questions that you asked me. Why does the biennial exist? What does the biennial do? For whom does the biennial exist?
Mr. Pekin,
answer for all of
Mr. Pekin, sorry to interrupt you.
The simple answer was that this is time for the architecture.
Mr. Pekin, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're having some problems with connectivity at the moment. So if you could just give us a moment to sort that out.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Pekin, thank you for your patience. Please do continue.
Okay, so you can hear me.
Okay, so you can hear me.
Yes, we can, yeah.
Okay, so if I continue, I'll tell about these three questions. So these three questions, like you asked me. Why does the biennial exist? What does the biennial do? And does the biennial do? And exist? Well, simply, there's a clarity for me. And it says architecture biennial is an event that progress of architecture discipline. So what does this mean? What does architecture discipline? When I was looking at several diagrams, I came across this diagram where Andrew Zago and Todd Gannon both and they were explaining in an essay about the discipline of architecture. You can talk about profession as an architecture, the discipline of an architecture, and the field of architecture, which according to this, it's just like field of architecture is everything in it, and beyond the profession of architecture. The discipline is something important. I mean, it's that that we build up. Mostly biennials to me, they add something to the discipline. So they're beyond architecture, let's say. And funnily, if you continue with the circle, there's another diagram that is from Sao Paulo, and this is all about the different people in the field of architecture in 21st century. It is again another circle, and the circle is divided into several different areas, which I mean, like from this circle to the discipline circle to the other one, it's pretty obvious that we have a very rich discipline, and we should be just trying to position ourselves in the discipline in biennial and do something that is for discipline. So when I was again trying to define architecture, I was always like confused between what architecture is, or what architecture should do, or what these are like really big questions, but there are maybe several answers that we all try to explain to ourselves. And in one of the lectures of Michael Hayes, he's a professor at Harvard, and I came across to this quote of Adolf Loos, which was, if we find a mound 6 feet long and 3 feet wide in the forest, formed into a pyramid shaped by a shovel, we become serious, and something in us says someone lies buried here. That is architecture. So if we go to the first, if we look at the first one again, everything that is in the discipline, the profession, everything is architecture. So then, if we look at this sentence, this is another approach to, again, the same problem. And what this sentence says is architecture mostly has a site. So the forest in this quote is a site. So we deal with the site. And then it mostly has a form, it has a genre, a type, something. So that's the pyramid. And we talk about a technique in architecture, which is it's shaped by a shovel. So it's most like any painting, any other artwork, anything else. It has a form, it has a technique. In addition to that, maybe it has a site. And as a result of all of these, it produces an effect. So becoming serious is an effect in the sentence. And on top of that, I was trying to like talk about my own effects, or what effect does and what it should do. Well, the effects are like mostly really simple ways of explaining what architecture could do. And so, like, I mean, if you imagine a building that looks like floating, then the effect of being like having a building that floats away, or fluidity, or anything else, it's something that we can communicate to the outer world. So the discipline that I was talking about is somehow can be explained by effects, and that's really simple, and we can like make things rich by that effect. And among those, I was like really interested in things that have like a painterly effect. So like when I'm talking about a painterly effect, what I was trying to do with, in my profession at least, was create objects that look like paintings. So this started in at SciArc with this. Maybe this was one of the most important studies that I did with Elena Manfredini. And what we were trying to do was take pixels, take 2D images, and make them painterly, like in digital platform with coding and like, I mean, mostly processing. And we started smearing them. We started doing different effects to them. And then we assumed that one pixel has an alternate materiality. And what we can do with that is try to come up with different images that, like 2D images, 2.5D images with some depth to it, and assume that a pixel is a building material. And once a pixel is a building material, then we can say that we're building with images and with pixels. So that was how I started with coming up with this word, with this phrase, digital painterly object, because once you're talking about painterly effects, then making them digitally, and you can start to imagine that they become 3D more and more. And there, the material comes to a question. So in this image, like we have different materials such as vinyls and then cloth and different other printed materials. And then another thing that we did is I started using light and color itself as a material. So what I'm saying is mostly a color could be color. If orange is a material, then if a pixel is a material, then orange can be a material as well. So orange would be the essence of that object, or blue in this case, in the other case. So I took some different classes and started projecting on them. So it was something between like physical glass and having that orange like thing, and it started like changing. So this was this exhibition was called Procedural Reality, and this was in Istanbul. And what it does is basically, I don't know if you guys know the word procedural. Procedural is procedural textures are digital textures that, like how you do render wood or marble or anything like that. It's like 3D textures, so they change. And in this exhibition, what I was trying to do is implement light into a glass and have them fuse together to make it like a procedural texture in the glass. So again, there was this effect of seeing through an image and building this painterly object in a sense. This is another image of the show. It has very 5 glass sculptures, which you can see through them and you can walk through them. And this was more or less a study for a project that we did prior to this exhibition. It was a photography museum. So basically, this is how I was trying to connect between effects and architecture, I guess. So having an image, having a color, having this 2.5 dimensional painting, let's say, and making this a architectural object was this case. And then when I was trying to think about what an object is, it was an object is mostly more three-dimensional than these ones. So we started trying to make objects in 3D space and shape them and form them. So once there's the form, I was pretty much interested in shaping things and changing stuff. So I started building these forms, and this is another exhibition that we did here in Istanbul, and it had those 2.5 dimensional forms, which are again objects that you can hang on the wall. But these are mostly understood as art objects. And if you come back to the question of architecture and art, and what is architecture, what is art, I think these do a lot to at least my discipline of architecture, because if you go back to that quote, they have a site, they have a form, they have a technique, they make an effect, the effect of being in a painting or being a painterly object. And then there this middle form that you see in the middle, the more rectangular cubic-like thing. This is how this was another attempt to make those more object-like things. So if I go back again, there are those 2-dimensional images, and they become more volumetric in a building by having objects that enrich those 2-dimensional planes, and then having again 2 planes that have form, and then putting the form itself there. And on top of that, there are again different objects in this show, which a 3-dimensional object and wall sculptures. Wall sculptures, I guess, but they're, according to me, these are all architectural projects and attempts to do architectural objects. And on top of this, I recently started to a private house project here in Istanbul, and it has these objects arrayed in a linear site. So this is again the relationship between those objects and those forms. So this again, if you go to architecture and art, the relation between architecture and art, the form that you see here on the right side and the form that you see on the building, they're pretty similar. And this was an attempt how I tried to do my own I don't know, on discipline. So it was like trying to do something that is between art and architecture, I guess, but I call everything architecture. So I mean, if you look at the examples in the world, there are like several things. Statue of Liberty is a sculpture that you can walk in it. So why should we talk about our art or at least sculpture and architecture differently? I mean, these were some initial thoughts that I applied on this house, and basically, what I showed pretty fast here was a simple approach to my discipline. But if you go back to what the original part of this biennial thing, like I'm trying to make an own discipline. I think like right now in this table there, like with various students, where there's people from different parts of the world, and I guess like coming together to on a table and trying to make a discipline, I don't know, adding new things to this circle and enriching this should be at least the attempt of Vardia. I don't know. So this was pretty much a fast presentation of what I do and what I think about biennial. And I think answering more questions, I mean, not about my work, but generally about Vardia and your thoughts would be interesting for me.
Thank you, Mr. Pekin, for your very interesting introduction to your work and for your contribution to this workshop. I'll now open the floor for any questions and comments that we might have here in Venice. So if there's any questions, please do ask Mr. Pekin.
Hello, Mr. Pekin. I'm Sezen, and actually my research topic is really related to what you have told, and like it's really a general issue about like the relationship between art and architecture. But I have a question about the scale thing. I see that you also make some thinking on it. And how do you, so when you compare your work in a museum space and also in a city space like a building, how do you analyze the space of Venice Biennale in that sense? For example, it doesn't crawl in the city that much, but it has a restricted, not restricted, but really defined space in the city. So in that sense, how do you see the space of Venice Biennale, for example, comparing to the Istanbul Biennale? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, it's kind of hard to. Yeah, I hear myself. I'm sorry. I'll give a second to explain. So the question was, at least what I understood about it is there are like two questions. One is scale, I guess, and how an object that you design and put it as a sculpture in a museum space, and how you expand that to a building. For that case, I think, of course, there are a lot of different things that change with the scale, from structure to little details, and one is basically habitable, and the other one is pure form. And but generally, what I tend to do, at least recently, has been just building a form and trying to make that form come true. So I was recently obsessed in trying to realize the project. So I think, of course, with scale, things will change, but without experiencing that truly, I don't think that I'm ready to answer that direct question. And for the second part with the biennial, that large of a scale is the city scale. So, like, I mean, even though Venice is framed and Istanbul is less framed in terms of biennial and exhibitions, I think the idea about having different pavilions, different houses, different buildings would be, I mean, it creates a cityscape, at least in Venice as well. So I don't know. I think it's pretty much valid that I see some similarities between Istanbul and Venice Biennale in terms of different buildings and different spaces.
For your answer. That's
Mr. Pekin, that's all the questions we have here. Thank you again for your contribution. It's very interesting to hear your point of view.
Thank you. Thank you.